Hello, everybody. So let's go ahead and get started here. Open up the PowerPoint one minute. Good morning or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to webinar 2. I want to give a big thank you to all the people who have joined, as it's always great seeing people with an interest and a growing desire and an energy to learn. You know, it's always, yes, last webinar we had a really good turnout, and we're just happy to see everybody. So we're going to start. This is going to be building on the previous webinar that I mentioned that we conducted last week, where we discussed the fundamentals of blockchain technology, such as understanding the differences of a centralized and a peer-to-peer platform, some of the advantages and applications of blockchain technology. But it's important, especially to understand the evolution and the growth of blockchain technology, not only to understand how it's changed over the course of time, but to also have a vision of where it can expand in the future. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. Starting off with a quick overview as to what blockchain is. Again, we discussed it last seminar, but in essence, a blockchain, which is originally referred to in separate words, block and chain, is a growing list and growing and expanding list of records known as blocks. Each individual block contains a cryptographic hash, which is an immutable transaction signature of the previous block. And immutable, all that means is it is unable to be changed and not able to be altered. So it contains the previous block's hash, a timestamp showing when the transaction took place, and the transaction data. So these are all linked using cryptography. And during this, they are signed and hashed for the next block to be added. So just as a quick overview and refresher there. So blockchain was invented by a person or a group of people using the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto. And a lot of people have heard the name and have read the stories that have came out of the crypto world with that name. But was created using, it was invented by Satoshi in 2008 to serve as a sort of as a public ledger for the cryptocurrency Bitcoin, which everyone is familiar with. He was the author of the well-known white paper, Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. It's nearly impossible to have as much of a global impact as the as he did without as much as someone knowing his name. But to this day, it's truly unknown who Satoshi Nakamoto is. Although it's something that really does intrigue me, and it's something that I have spent a lot of my personal time looking into, just, even for the thrill of it, seeing the different stories and the some of the news relating to Satoshi. People think that they understand who he is and stuff like that. It's just great seeing it, but that is definitely a separate topic for another day. But on the 3rd of January 2009, Bitcoin came into existence when the very first Bitcoin block was mined by Satoshi, which had the reward of 50 Bitcoins. The first recipient of Bitcoin was Hal Finney. He received 10 Bitcoins from Satoshi Nakamoto in the very first Bitcoin transaction, which was on the 12th of January 2009. One thing to note, though, is in August of 2014, the Bitcoin block file size, which contained all of the transactions that have ever occurred on the network, reached 20 gigabytes, which for file size, it's pretty large. But in January 2015, the size had grown to almost 30 gigabytes. And from January 2016 to January 2017, the Bitcoin blockchain grew from 50 to 100 gigabytes in size. So it went up exponentially. Um, but the ledger size has exceeded 200 gigabytes here in the early 2020 year. So it's very interesting to see when the trends increase the more interest and more traffic to the network. You can certainly see that just in the file size alone. So ever since January of 2009, blockchain has truly been growing and evolving, and it's produced a decentralization of currency and financial transactions, decentralization of data and information storage using a distributed and decentralized database, eliminating the need for, quote, trusted third parties to verify the transactions, such as intermediaries like banks and whatnot. Resistance to censorship, immutability, and corruption. This, again, it being a decentralized, more of a peer-to-peer thing, network type, it's hard to be censored and immuted, and it's not very prone to corruption as some of the bigger names are. And it introduced the proof of work consensus method, which it makes the blockchain unique as it combines the computational processing power through the use of nodes connected to the network, the Bitcoin network. These nodes all verify and secure a public ledger. This is something that we went over in more detail in the previous webinar. But today, the understanding the history of blockchain, as mentioned, is extremely important in understanding where it's going to be going here in the future. And it's creating hype in the market, and every other individual is interested to dig into the technology and benefit out of it. But it always intrigued me, at least, where did it all start and how it started, in the process of all that. I'm sure you all probably be interested in knowing this as well. So I'll be sharing a timeline with their respective years listed to kind of follow along, and that this technology started originating, and to share some interesting facts about the history of the evolution of blockchain technology. So the concept of distributed computing has been around since the 1990s, when Stuart Babber and Scott Stornetta work on the very first blockchain. So you can see, even before Bitcoin was created, it went all the way back to the 1990s. With distributed computing has been around since then. So around 2000, certainly blockchain gained more traction in 2009 with Bitcoin and the introduction of the concept of a blockchain to incarnate a decentralized ledger maintained by anonymous consensus. So 2009 was really where it saw the adoption and the implementation, for sure. Around 2010, the first Bitcoin purchase took place for an amount of 10,000 Bitcoin. He introduced the concept of Satoshi introduced the concept of blockchain to incarnate that ledger. So 2012 to 2013, the Bitcoin market surpassed over 1 billion. And in 2013, Vitalik Buterin, who we will talk about soon, he released the Ethereum white paper. And again, as mentioned, Satoshi Nakamoto released his white paper, the Bitcoin peer-to-peer cash system, in 2009. So 2014 was certainly a big year for blockchain and cryptocurrencies in general, as R3 was formed, and this forms consortium for over 40 legacy financial companies for implementing blockchain technology. And 2014 also saw it was the year that the Ethereum blockchain was funded. And Ethereum being a very popular crypto, it's a big time for that. But in 2015, only a year later, the Ethereum Genesis block was created, and the Linux Foundation unveiled Hyperledger to increase the blockchain technology. In 2016, there was a bug in the Ethereum DAO code, which was exploited and attacked. And there's a whole story with that. But in 2017, EOS was unveiled by Block.one as a new blockchain protocol for the implementation of decentralized applications. And currently, in the years 2018 to 2020 and beyond, we're going to be seeing and have already seen in the stages of initial coin offerings, also known as ICOs. And in tandem with that is the adoption of many developments in the implementation. So as we mentioned before, Vitalik Buterin was the creator of Ethereum. It was a whole new era for everything. He's a Russian-Canadian programmer and co-founder of the Bitcoin magazine that stated that Bitcoin needed a scripting language for building decentralized applications. But since it didn't really gain much agreement with the community, Vitalik started the development of his own and a new blockchain-based distributed computing platform, which we've all come to know as Ethereum. That featured a scripting functionality called smart contracts. Smart contracts are a code deployed across a decentralized network, like a business contract. How they have predefined terms. There's a very key difference in that smart contracts are enforced by their blockchain network. They're an important computing innovation because they allow individuals who don't know or don't necessarily trust one another to collaborate without fear that the other party won't perform as outlined by the terms that they agreed on. So you don't really even have to like the person, and this just will continue to be that link between the two to make sure the transaction goes. So beginning at the beginning of what blockchains are, a blockchain is a data structure that makes it possible to create a digital ledger of data and share it among a network of independent parties. There are many different kinds of blockchains, but the ones we're going to be looking over today are the public, private, and permissioned. So public blockchains, such as Bitcoin, are large distributed networks that are run through a native cryptocurrency. A cryptocurrency being a unique bit of data that can be traded between two parties. Public blockchains are open for anyone to participate at any level and have open source code that their community maintains. So public, completely accessible, and on the contrary, we have private, which are also known as a distributed ledger technology, which we covered in depth, known as a DLT, tend to be a little smaller and don't utilize a token or cryptocurrency. Their membership is very closely controlled, and they are favored by consortiums that have trusted members and trade confidential information. So only authorized nodes and people that are trusted and have a rapport are able to trade that information and authorize those transactions. And then we have permissioned blockchains, which one popular one is Ripple, the crypto Ripple. They control roles that individuals can play within the network. So they're still large and distributed systems that use a native token, excuse me, and their core code may or may not be open source. So maybe think of it as half public, half private. It's a bit of both. So yeah, those are the three types there. And with all this information, we need to understand what blockchains do. Um, to prevent the network from being corrupted, not only are blockchains decentralized, but they often utilize a cryptocurrency because that ensures it's a verification type thing. So a blockchain is a peer-to-peer system with no central authority managing the data flow. So peer-to-peer means it would be from me to one of you. There's no one in the middle delaying the transaction or gaining information or taking their cut, even taxes. It's just a straight one to the other person with no one in between. So one of the key ways to removing the central control while still maintaining that data integrity is to have a large distributed network of independent users. This means that the computers that make up the network are in more than one location. So it can't all be done within one room. It has to have a network of people to come together and verify that. And these computers are referred to as nodes, which we'll be referring to them from now on. Let's see. Yeah, so blockchains networks often produce cryptocurrencies as an incentive to maintain that integrity of the network. Again, this is to verify and show, and more of as a reward and a byproduct of that network. So many cryptocurrencies are traded on exchanges like stocks, which you've seen before. You can buy them, sell them at any time there. They increase in value, they go down in value. Cryptocurrencies work a little bit different on each blockchain. So basically the software pays the network, pays the hardware to operate. This software is the blockchain protocol. Well-known blockchain protocols are, as we discussed, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, Bitcoin Cash, Stellar, EOS. These are just some of the many thousands of cryptos out there. But the hardware consists of the nodes that are securing the data on the network. So here's a good illustration of some full nodes here. So, you have the peer-to-peer diagram, all with those full nodes securing all of the data and being centralized there. So why do blockchains matter? We found the application and we understand how they work, but what's the point? So we'll show here. Blockchains are recognized as the fifth evolution of computing because they're a new trust layer for the internet. But before blockchains, trust was established by central authorities that would issue certificates. Relying on a third party always allows for a single point of failure, where you can send the money, but if that doesn't go through to the centralized mediator, that transaction will not go through. But on the other hand, blockchains establish trust in different ways. So one of the mechanisms is the proof of work mechanism, where it requires the miners to have a full and accurate history of their transactions to participate on the network. So this shows that they have put in the work and the time in order to participate. And proof of stake, blockchains create trust by requiring nodes that are processing transactions to stake some of the cryptocurrency that may be forfeited if they're caught defrauding the network. Let's see. Private blockchains build confidence by distributing the data across a network of connected but independent participants that are known by each other and can be held accountable. So from that, each blockchain uses the different incentive systems to establish trust that each participant on the network will cooperate and continue in keeping a full unaltered history of each transaction or entry that is made within the database that they share. So when the data is permanent and reliable in a digital format, you know for a fact that you can transact business online in ways that in the past were only possible offline. You know, if you give someone cash in person, it's obvious if you're going to accept it or not. But at least with this digitally, it's very safe, and there's no other way to understand the unaltered history of the transaction. It's all completely visible to you. So when data is permanent and reliable in a digital format, you push out the slow business and banking processes, such as money wires and fund settlements. Those can all be done nearly instantaneously, which is a huge upside for it, because the implications for secure digital records are enormous for the global economy. Blockchains are important because they allow for new efficiency and reliability in the exchange of valuable and private information that once required a third-party intermediary to intervene on and to facilitate those funds, such as the movement of money and the authentication of identity. Some banks, and you have to have a full profile with them before you can even bank. This is really a big deal because much of our society and economy has been structured around establishing trust, enforcing trust, and when it's broken, the third parties that facilitate trust, it's hard to know where you can turn to. So you can really imagine how this simple software can be utilized to fix areas that have proven to not be foolproof, such as voting or supply chain management, money movement, and even the exchange of property. So they really do allow for new efficiency and reliability to facilitate those transactions. So here's some of the pillars of blockchain technology, and these are the fundamental principles of blockchain: it being decentralized, immutable, and transparency. And all these mean is decentralization means there's no third-party intermediary, so there's no one person who controls the network more. It's immutable, so it's unable to be changed, unaltered. Once that block is written, once that information is written down, you can't change it. And it just goes to the next block. And these all wraps together with transparency, as it being 100% able to see what time and how much funds were transferred. This allows to build that trust without feeling an intermediary has to be involved. So all three of these go in tandem. You can't have immutability without that transparency, because you wouldn't know. And that decentralization is completely transparent because you don't have that third party there. So some of the advantages of blockchain here, you see the autonomy. Blockchain works according to the rules set by its members. So there's no need for that central decision-making body. You don't have a big guy in the head office calling the shots. It's all has to be agreed on in a consensus. It's secure. Operating data input on the blockchain is deemed secure owing to the stacking of the blocks. The client accountability. Each blockchain participant has rights and obligations with regard to the blockchain technology. So everyone, again, it's a full party involved thing. Transparency, each blockchain offers an audit trail that can be consulted at any time by all the blockchain members. So if you were to see a big move in, for example, Bitcoin, you would understand exactly and when that happened. Um, and this is important for people who, again, don't have that trust in some of the services available. And automation. So the rules set upstream by blockchain members via the smart contracts allow for automatic settlement. So these all go together and in tandem and really allow for that blockchain to go smoothly and allow us to uh, be 100% understanding on how it all works. So blockchain, Bitcoin is based on a distributed ledger, or rather specifically a blockchain. Um, it was the first blockchain, but the technology has begun to spread across the global economy. So the reason blockchains let you keep thousands of strangers that you don't know honest and consistent. So the structure of um, of blockchain technology, you have the block, the chain, and the network. You got three fundamental things there. Um, a list of transactions recorded into a ledger, and this is referring to, so block specifically is a list of transactions recorded into a ledger over a given period. The size, period, and triggering events for blocks is different for every blockchain. Um, but it's important to note that not all blockchains are recording and securing a record of the movement of their cryptocurrency as their primary objective. But all blockchains do record the movement of their cryptocurrency or token. So they may not have a record of the currency, but they do have a record of the currency, but they don't necessarily have a record of the movement of their money. Think of the transaction as simply being the recording of data, assigning a value to it, such as what happens in a financial transaction, and it's used to interpret what the data means. And then we have chain, which a hash that links one block to another, mathematically chaining them together. This is one of the most difficult concepts, in my opinion, in blockchain to comprehend. So think of it as it's almost that magic glue that sticks two blockchains together and allows them to create mathematical trust. The hash in a blockchain is created from the data that was from the previous block. So when that transaction takes place, it is giving that new block that information. The hash is sort of like a fingerprint um, of the data and locks the blocks in order and time. Although blockchains are relatively new innovation, hashing is not. Hashing was invented over 30 years ago. This old innovation, it is being used because it creates a one-way function that cannot be decrypted. Again, this goes with that security and immutability that we discussed. And a hashing function creates a mathematical algorithm that maps data of any size to a bit of string or to a fixed size, if you will. So a bit of string usually is about 32 characters long, and then represents the data that was hashed. So the secure hash algorithm, this is also known as SHA, is one of some of the cryptographic hash functions used in blockchains. And this can be in reference to SHA-256, which is a common algorithm that generates an almost unique fixed 256-bit, which is 32 bytes, hash. So for practical purposes, think of the hash as a digital fingerprint, again, of data used to lock it in place within the blockchain. And then we have the network, which is comprised of full nodes, which nodes are computers. Let's see. Think of them as as the computer running an algorithm that is securing the network. It's running an algorithm all the time to make sure that network stays secure. Each node containing a complete record of all of the transactions that were ever recorded in the blockchain. So the nodes are located all over the world and can be operated by anybody. It can be someone right next to you. It can be someone across the world. It's difficult, expensive, and very time consuming to operate a full node. So people don't usually do it for free. They're incentivized to operate a node because they want to earn money, cryptocurrency. The underlying blockchain algorithm rewards them for their service, and the reward is usually in the token or cryptocurrency, like Bitcoin. So that's the incentive part of it. Bitcoin, especially when it came out, that was a huge incentive for people. But you can only trust and fully understand it until you've invested some time into learning the fundamentals of it. So a blockchain is horizontal technology. It's comprised of four very, very basic components. So we have the digital ledger, which is a continually updated network hosted database of all of the transactions on a blockchain. It's comprised of blocks of transactions with metadata chained together using cryptography. So then we have the consensus mechanism, which we discussed one earlier, but it is programmed into each blockchain protocol and is responsible for verifying, authenticating, and updating the transactions on the network's digital ledger. It's not necessary, though, in private blockchains, as it's not public, whereas having a public transaction, you want a consensus mechanism. A digital asset, which is the goods transacted on the blockchain. So cryptocurrency provided the initial proof of concept, and with the industry now looking to color tokens like any other form of asset, it's that incentivization. And then we have the network participants, computing nodes with access to the blockchain, which is able to manipulate the ledger and view past transactions, may be pre-approved or verified by a consensus mechanism, which we looked in the second basic component. Think of blockchain as a transformative way to establish trust, transparency, and efficiency within peer-to-peer systems. So it's there to establish the trust, but not there to intervene and create it forcibly. Blockchain is not only Bitcoin. Bitcoin does not equal blockchain. This may go without saying, but Bitcoin is a currency and a system that uses blockchain as underlying data structure, which can be used for many things, including cryptocurrencies. But there are other coins that do this as well. There's thousands of different kinds of cryptocurrencies. And personally, when I think of Bitcoin, I don't immediately think of blockchain, even though it was created through this. So blockchain is it's the underlying data structure. So let's see here. But for businesses, we will say, however, blockchain holds the promise of transactional transparency, as it is extremely popular. It has an ability to create secure real-time communication networks with partners around the globe to support everything from supply chains to payment networks to real estate deals and healthcare data sharing. So blockchain isn't one thing, it's an architectural principle, which it stores the records. A blockchain is a store of records that cryptographically secures, but not by default encrypted. Write once, append only, distributed and completely or partially replicated, and decentralized in its purest form. So you can see in the bottom here, all of the nodes connected only through one way. There's no central person there. It's all decentralized. It's all can be completely or partially replicated, and it's only write once, append only. So cutting the middleman. Blockchain technology makes middlemen, or again, so-called trusted third parties, obsolete in many applications. Um, Bitcoin, for example, Bitcoin will serve as the example where they are not routed through a central instance, so it's just a bank, and can only be transferred directly between the parties. So whenever you buy Bitcoin from somebody else, it will not be going through somebody to verify it. It's all done through the blockchain. That's especially the important part of it, because it cuts out any taxes, it cuts out any transaction fees, the speed is increased. There's so much beneficials with blockchain, especially sending overseas, where you can send tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars for such a little amount of money. But in a world without middlemen, things can get more efficient in unexpected ways, from PayPal to mobile payments to other segments of the electronic payment industry. Uh, Convenience is battling with remittance fees. So cutting out the middleman is truly the key to blockchain's appeal, um, and which may see it as adopted. We may see it as adopted for industries ranging from banking to financial, retail, and shipping. Fast forward probably 5 years from now, add every smart fridge, smart car, smart digital media asset, smart things are all automatically and economically independent. Um, that is the true power of blockchain digital infrastructure. Blockchain technology offers the possibility to use it in gaining trust, security, and transparency among people and entities that do not necessarily know each other, but can bring great business to opportunities in sectors where bureaucracies and intermediaries exist. Third world countries or some places where taxes are heavy. Cryptocurrency is a really great way of transferring those funds. Um, and the blockchain is a technology that allows the users to have more confidence and security compared to traditional institutions such as banks, lawyers, notaries, among others. It allows for financial transactions online without an intermediary, um, a revolution that makes unnecessary banks and all third party sites useless. You see things that you can buy online with cryptocurrencies. You're not going through your bank. You're not paying those fees. You're not putting a hold on it. Um, it's all done immediately. This is truly due to the fact that the technology ensures that we all make it through it, are registered in many places. And once verified, it makes it practically impossible to modify them. Again, this being a immutable signature where you can only you cannot alter. Um, so when you're taking out that middle person, opportunities are really endless with that. But that pretty much covers the cutting out the middleman part and the applications for business and stuff like that there. So as a quick thank you and overview of everything, we covered the when and how blockchain was created and the applications that we've seen it used for. Understanding that it's simply just has a cryptographic hash. It's an immutable transaction, and all it does is shows a timestamp of when the transaction took place and the data. So everything, when it's created, when the block is created, it uses it for the next block, and those are linked through that magic glue that we kind of talked about, using that chain there. Works there just to agree on that transaction being taking place. So I did want to say thank you to everyone that tuned in. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of a better understanding of at least some of the applications, history, and some of the future of where blockchain technology can be used, and where it can be applied, and how it has changed our financial world in such a way of, allowing us to conduct these transactions and have a technology to apply to many different things in the world. But thank you so much for listening and learning. And we will be back again next week with a more in-depth view of blockchain technology and where it's going to be taking us. So thank you guys very much, and have a good night.